Welcome, welcome, welcome to Women Doing Business Differently. This is the place where we talk about how we do our businesses, why we're doing them the way we do them. We explore the fact that women have got to break through internal glass ceilings, external glass ceilings, and just all that it takes to become our own woman in this new world and actually redefine it. So I get to have completely awesome people on this show with me. And one of them is my new friend, Rachael Gass. Sorry, I almost said Goss. Rachael Gass. And Rachel's a leadership coach. She is a leadership coach extraordinaire. She's been, let me see, she spent 20 years in corporate America. She has worked in healthcare, in IT, in finance. She's been chief of staff. So if you're thinking West Wing, that's
know
where
all the secrets.
But we can imagine it because she just looks like she would fit that role very beautifully of like, I'm here, I'm in control, and I'm still extremely personable. She's a mom, and she is also a dog mom. So I'm a cat mom myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to welcome you, Rachael, and say thank you so much for coming to the insanity that is Women Doing Business Differently.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a joy to get to know you. I'm happy to be here.
I know, you remind me actually, or that our growing friendship reminds me of a woman that I met out in California. I was at this giant company called Novartis. I don't know if you've probably heard of Novartis.
Yeah.
So I was working at Novartis, and she was too. And she has this poise. She just has this thing about her that we met up in the coffee room, and I was treating her with kid gloves because I was certain she was a VP or a C something O, and I just was like certain. Nope, she was an administrative assistant like me. But you know, it's like you have that marvelous combination that she has, which is really real and definitely sovereign. And I love that.
That is such a nice compliment. Thank you.
It's great. So tell us about you. Tell us what you're up to these days.
Yeah, so recently I exited stage left from my corporate career. Like many women have found themselves, especially those of us with younger kids. So I've got a first grader, had a super demanding job as chief of staff, and as much as I loved the job and the people and the exposure and experience I was getting, there was still a lot of it that I was struggling with. And so struggling with that role and having a child at home and just really presenting this great opportunity where I didn't financially need the same that I needed to continue my life, because we weren't traveling, we weren't eating out, we weren't doing all this other stuff, that I took the opportunity to say, you know what, I'm gonna explore something else. And when I resigned, I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but I knew I always loved coaching. I knew I loved people. I love helping people. It's what comes pretty naturally for me to have these conversations and connect with folks. So, so I decided to hang out my shingle. I run group coaching programs for leaders at all levels. I coach folks one-on-one. I do a lot of team building facilitation, which is how you and I connected. So it's really been great and actually really surprising, like very surprising how confident I feel and competent, which for 20 years I was always like running towards feeling more competent and more comfortable, and I'm getting there, and it's really been a really great gift.
That is something I really so deeply appreciate you mentioning, because we women learn to present ourselves as though we are already there, as though we're already confident, when inside the experience is so different. And I mean, you've been chief of staff, for God's sake. You know, somebody watching is going to go, wait a minute, what did she just say? Can you tell us tell me how you worked through that, or
yeah, well, I think I'm probably still working through it, all right? But yeah, I think a lot of it comes from finding my place of purpose and passion. You know, I'm so passionate about what I'm doing now, and I feel, and I can actually see that I'm helping people and making a difference, you know, one little nugget at a time maybe, but but it makes me really comfortable that I'm on the right path and I'm onto something. So I think just settling into what I'm doing has really helped me overcome that. It's funny, I actually wrote a blog. I write blogs now and then, and it was fake it till you make it, right? Because for so many of us, we do, like, that's the mantra we were told, like, just put on your mask, fake it till you make it, you'll get there. If you, you know, and there's a part of that, like, if you believe it, if you think it, it will start to come. And so, you know, that's what cognitive therapy is about, and I'm not opposed to that. But I think so many of us use that mantra and that saying instead of just being our vulnerable, authentic self and saying, yeah, actually, I don't have it. I don't know, you know, and letting ourselves be curious to learn and letting that growth mindset actually prevail instead of let's try and fake it. And then people will perceive us this way and then it'll all be okay. But for me, doing that just made me even more internally uncomfortable. You know, I was like, no, I can't keep pretending, you know, so.
Yeah, I was in corporate America for 30 years and may even find that I have to spend some more time there, or choose to spend some more time there, you know, because getting a business started is not, it doesn't really work with this, well, I'll just go for the goal and I'll get there, you know. It's just, you have to be far more flexible. And what you're talking about makes me just reflect again and again and again on how we need both the feminine and the masculine. We need to, the feminine is, let's come home, let's come inside and find out what we like, not keep trying to fit in. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, finding your purpose is huge, right? Like when you actually feel connected to the, and people will ask me like, well, how did you leave? Like, how did you make that decision? Because the company I worked for, we joke it was the golden handcuffs, right? You get a pension, you're there for, like, people don't leave, you retire there. And
Wow.
but my values were just increasingly becoming at odds. And I was like, I can't do this. And really with having a young daughter, I thought, what am I showing her, right? That it's more important for me to make money and for us to have things and do stuff than really being comfortable and present and always being, you know, I was just frazzled, frenetic, and kind of angry. You know, I was very annoyed, mostly at myself, because I knew this wasn't feeling right for me and I wasn't doing anything about it, you know. And you can't compartmentalize that. That doesn't just go, oh, I'm just gonna put that over there. At least not for me, you know.
Right.
And you know, and again, I think one of the things we connected on was I really struggle with anxiety. And you know, I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression at a pretty young age. Right when I could put words to it, I was a teenager. And so it's always been something that I've struggled with. And instead of struggling with it, I thought, well, I had a great therapist who helped me reframe it. But, you know, what if that in and of itself is my superpower, right? Being vulnerable and being able to say, yeah, this is my anxiety, and that's not the only thing that I am. And it helps me maybe bring some clarity and make good choices for myself, you know, and keeps me connected to my values, which...
Yeah, like what else for me at this point? What else is there, honestly? I've looked at spirituality for decades, and just like you, I was diagnosed with the same things, with depression, clinical depression, anxiety, had it for 30 years. And it really dominates your life. You have to reframe, I don't know, everything.
Constantly.
Everything. Yes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't go away. I mean, I know for me, like I've had cycles, right? So certainly when I'm more stressed out or when things are intense, and really when I get farther and farther away from my values, that's when the dissonance sets in and the anxiety is heightened and I ruminate more, you know. So really having to pull out the toolkit, right? Stick to the toolkit and know what works for me to try and I won't say overcome, because again, I don't think we overcome this stuff, but just sometimes coping, sometimes thriving.
Yeah, I had a really unusual thing happen. I forget if I told you, but I was in this workshop. It was a spiritual growth, spiritual development workshop. And 2 weeks after I had left it, I suddenly realized I hadn't been depressed for 2 weeks. And
wow.
I was like, okay, wait a second. Is this going to be is this like my new real? Is this my new normal?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it is.
That's amazing.
And
yeah.
I can tell you what I think it is, but that it doesn't matter because because I don't really know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you just want to take the good feeling, right? Like whatever it is, replicate that, keep this feeling, keep it for as long as we can. Right. And no, and not everything works for everybody in the same way, but every now and again, something pops in, there's a little nugget and you're like, oh, yes. And then I'm good for a few weeks or whatever, until the next thing comes up and it's like, ooh, but
yeah, I like those little epiphany pills. Those are good. It's like, I know things. Things.
Yeah. Wow. So does everybody know this? Because everybody should know this. I don't know what it is right now, but yeah.
Well, it's become very clear to me, and it's what I want to bring forward in my leadership work, is that we women really don't have a sense of self that is stable, secure, sovereign, based on things that allow us to know who we are and make choices for who we want to be. Yeah. We just really are not. We're brought up to be very external, to be of service, and then to fit in, all of these things that stop us. And I think one of the big things that we need to do is we need to actually be more emotional. Yeah. We need to allow a hell of a lot of emotion. And we need to, I've talked to some women in the last week who were like, I don't even know what I feel.
Wow.
I remember being there in my 20s.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I feel like it's maybe not totally now, but generally speaking, like the women that we see holding leadership positions do have more masculine tendencies, right? They're not super connected to their emotions. That is still portrayed very much as a weakness.
Yep.
Don't cry, don't share, express frustration. And then certainly when women do express emotions, it's viewed way more negatively than if a man were to express that same anger or intensity, so it becomes a little bit of a double-edged sword that I think for many years, women who are in positions of power have learned to just not show that. And for me, I've led teams, managed teams, and always, I do believe that my superpower and the thing that has made me most impactful and influential is to share my emotions, appropriately, not in every meeting, every time, I'm not saying let's come in and all just have a giant gab fest and bitch about whatever, right. But being able to relate to people and say, yeah, this made me super angry, or this makes me super scared, or this is, and being able to name those emotions, share them, and know that a lot of people are feeling them and find an appropriate outlet or a place for them, right? This is what change management's all about, right? Knowing that people have emotions for change and are going to experience things differently. So what are the ways, whether it's communication, training, conversation, what have you, to say, okay, we know you may be feeling something like this, and here's how we're gonna support you. And those emotions are okay, right? There's no good or bad emotion that we're experiencing.
Say the last part again. I'm sorry. Say the last bit again. I couldn't hear.
That everything we're experiencing is okay. There's no good or bad emotion to whatever it is that we're feeling.
I agree. I think that what makes any emotion bad is when we hold it back and it becomes this sort of
virus. A tumor.
I think of it almost like a missile, like a charged up missile, that it's like one of those cars or something you pull back when you're a kid. You have these toys and you go, and it just takes off. And
zooms out of control.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this is why I like talking about emotional intelligence so much with folks, You know, I've always been drawn to that. I had a professor in college, a mentor, and she was like, check out this article on EQ. And I was like, what is this? Like, it just blew my mind. Like, you know, it was over 20 years ago. And she obviously knew that I was interested or could sense that this was what I was trying to find words for and a framework around. And so it was a great
Yeah.
introduction, and I've always been connected to it. I do trainings around that, and, you know, individual assessments and stuff. And it's really impactful to give people the opportunity to self-reflect and to exactly what you said, like, there's no reason to hold those emotions in. We do need to find appropriate outlets for them, and we can't let our emotions like control our universe. This probably doesn't serve us very well, but we need to experience them. We need to feel them, not just push them down. So.
Right. Right. Let me ask you, as somebody who works with leaders, why is emotion so important? In other words, how does a leader put that emotional intelligence into action and make the workplace better and make the bottom line better?
Yeah, I think that's great. I'm so glad we're talking about this. I think two things. One is being authentic, right? If you can be vulnerable and authentic and share your emotions and your experiences with people,
Yeah.
they are more likely to reciprocate that. You immediately build trust. You know,
Right.
when you share with somebody and are vulnerable, trust is just increased big time. And that certainly impacts the bottom line. You know, I was talking to a CFO that I coach, and she was like, very, very busy. You know, everything's just black and white numbers. Like, she's the mother of young kids, does not have time for any of this like idle chit chat, you know, no hi in the email, nothing like that. And I said, well, how do you think your brand is suffering because of that? You know, she's like, well, certainly, like, people don't want to come talk to me. Like, they're very threatened by me. You know, I'm like, okay. And what about the work, right? Like, how much is the work suffering? And as she was reflecting on that, it was very clear that people are doing a lot around her, behind her, making up stories, not having the conversation directly with her. So the amount of time that is wasting is huge, right? That's so inefficient. We can't do business like this. And so once she started to have water cooler chats with folks, just be more open in emails, like, hey, how was your weekend? Very
Right.
simple.
Right.
Like, not a lot of time, not like, tell me about your divorce, you know, like, very simple.
Yeah.
She immediately could tell that people were bringing issues to her that they would not have ordinarily done. Like, they would have waited until it escalated to an extreme degree. You know, so the work was moving a lot quicker. So I think when leaders in and of themselves are able to be vulnerable, be authentic, the work certainly happens, and you give people permission to do that, you know, and to share themselves, bring their whole selves to work. This is a lot of what we talk about in psychological safety, right? People feel like they can raise their hand, share ideas without repercussion. And part of that starts with knowing what's going on inside of you, why things are triggering to you, why you even want to speak up about something, right? Like, this is a big deal to me. Why is that? You know?
Right.
So being reflective.
I'm very focused on the system and how the system has inherent flaws that if you don't address them, you can't get around them. Yeah. And they're always going to be present, you know, until we decide that we want to change the actual structure. And not have this top-down control thing going on.
Yeah.
And I've been working a lot lately on how do I get this message across in such a way that people can hear it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I think, excuse me, in my course, I talk to folks about making conscious decisions about their leadership style and pulling, you know, different frameworks and definitions out there. You know, servant leadership clear is certainly one that speaks to, you know, what you're talking about, like flipping the hierarchy and having leaders there for their people, right? You know, like, what is it that you want? How am I going to support you? Not how are you supporting my agenda or the organization's bigger agenda, you know?
Right.
So I think the more people make conscious decisions about how they approach, like actually have a leadership mantra, actually subscribe to some, and maybe they make it up, a combination of a few things that feel comfortable to them, that's great. But really being deliberate about how you want to lead people and what your purpose is in leading people. So I think it's just as important for people to say, you know what, I don't want to have management responsibilities. I don't want to have to, lead people. But back to your point about the system, like until there's other avenues that people feel successful and it doesn't come in the title of manager, director, executive, blah, 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 with people that they have direct influence over, we need to find other ways for people to elevate their careers without it influencing, without it directly managing people.
Yeah, and we're so indoctrinated. We've been indoctrinated from the time we started into school. Somebody knows more than I do. Somebody's more important, somehow intrinsically important than I am. That's total bullshit. Nobody's more important than I am. We're all equally important. And it's my last job, and I won't say where it was, but my last job, it was extremely toxic. And the whole trust thing was blown time and time again, like over and over again.
Yeah.
And once you get to a certain point with that, you're done.
Yeah.
You're just done.
It's really, really hard to come back from that, especially when you see opportunities, right? It's like, there's your opportunity to build trust. There's your opportunity to be vulnerable. There was your opportunity to whatever, and you blew it. And I don't think people have bad intention, but they're not thinking about the impact.
Absolutely.
Like, what do I have to do? Okay, let's do that. We have a communication plan. Okay, good. All right, well, off we go. And not really thinking about how that's going to land with people, what impact they're actually having. And I think way too many leaders and people in power positions feel like their number one job is to move the work, instead of their number one job is to take care of the people who are moving the work.
Right. It's just that simple. And I think from my perspective, it comes out of a worldview, a mindset that we are somehow parts of something bigger than us. We're part of a machine that's bigger than us, instead of we are actually the locus of what's happening. We're actually it. And I mean, that's a 180-degree difference. And it is both subtle and hit me over the head obvious at the same time.
Right. And it makes me think of what Gandhi says, be the change you want to see. Right. Yeah. And we diminish our power.
Right.
We don't take our spot to say, actually, I could probably change something here. Now, it might not be the massive change you want, the end goal, but what's the small test of change? What's the little thing that you can do to move the culture?
There's that, and then there's also the big idea. And if the big idea comes from certain people, it's okay. But if it comes from certain other people, they don't want to hear it.
Right.
And so what you've got is this emotional imbalance going on. You've got people below the so-called power line, who are bitter, frustrated, and it may not even be from the company they're currently in. It's like a lifetime of this kind of setup.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah. You carry that PTSD with you.
It comes along with you. Yes. They give you a backpack for it.
Wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice to just, that was then. We're like, but no, sorry. We're all chapters into the whole big story. So.
And nobody was born in a cubicle. So like, let's stop thinking that just because I hold this position now that I've never done anything but that.
Right.
I knew this
all the
man,
experiences.
all of it. All of it. I knew a man who, when he was managing some people at one company, they would take a day a week and people could do whatever they wanted. It had to be work related, but if they wanted to explore something bigger than their description, and he was just there to help them. And his staff, of course, was ecstatic. And
that's amazing.
Loved him. Oh my God.
Yeah. That's amazing.
He was amazing. Yeah.
And it's kind of like how we started, right? Back to what's your passion? What, you know, what's your purpose? What are you passionate about? And then we're going to let you explore that. Like that's beautiful.
Oh my God. I think I might have mentioned this before on this show another time or two. Um, but I worked with a man, I was at a call center, and this man was working on his PhD in human resources. I think I was the only one who knew it.
What?
Yeah.
Wow. How sad. What a missed opportunity, you know, and this is we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion. You know, I'm very, very passionate about it. I mostly,
Yeah.
you know, being a white woman, I don't talk too much about it, but certainly as an ally, but I do talk about destigmatizing mental health in that context. Because really, when I think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's bringing everybody's experiences, everything they've done to the table to actually hear their thoughts. This is what inclusion's about. This is how you get better product. This is how you get better business outcomes. You know, it's not, you know, I mean, I just, it's mind-boggling to me how in this day and age, we are still so set on, like you said, if the decision or if the idea doesn't come from here, this level, in this appropriate meeting, in this particular format, then we can't even hear it. You know,
Right.
like we can't even let it like seep in there to mull over, you know. It's like, okay, big boss, you want to take credit for the idea? That's cool. You know, I mean, it's not, but some people would just let it go to get the idea moving,
Right.
you know, but it's like, unless it's presented in a particular way, in a particular situation, then we can't even hear it. And this is the great shame that I feel about corporate.
Yeah, I don't see, I think that what I would like to bring to the table, because I don't see a reason that it wouldn't be insanely helpful for innovation. And I mean, crazy, just have a team, start with one team, and you're going to have a person from every level on the team. Or maybe you'll have multiples on the bottom because they're going to need more support to feel okay to speak up.
Right.
Or you have somebody there to make sure everybody does speak up. Some way you bring everybody together and you make sure that everybody has a voice.
Yeah. And it's really hard to do, right? Because like you said, intrinsically, we have been, just our whole lives have been to look at the hierarchy, right?
Right.
So even when you have folks who are all in there, and when the purpose is to have this diversity of thought and innovative ideas, it helps, but it's still like, you really have to make a conscious effort. And whoever the so-called leader is with the title needs to figure out how they're creating that space, how they are stepping back from their ego, and maybe, and even calling it, right? Like, in this forum, I'm not vice president of blah, blah, blah.
Right.
In this forum, the 10 of us are, you know, associates to blah, you know, or whatever, because we need titles for some reason. Those matter.
Well, do we though, for an exercise like that? I think that at the beginning, why don't we just have exploratory sorts of arts-based,
I love it,
you know, investigations of like, oh my God, look what I just did. I mean, because the minute it's like that Haribo commercial that's on right now, where you see these adults like, who likes Haribo gummy bear? And you know, once you get everybody being completely goofy, you see the real person, and you are less snowed by that thing, you know. And and that's why I love bringing acting in, because when everybody can be a goofball, nobody has to be embarrassed.
Right. Yeah. That's the vulnerability, right? That's the authenticity. I love it. Yeah. I worked for a company and they had like a program, you know, a group. And once a year you'd put in all your innovative ideas, big ideas, everybody put them in. And they'd pick a few, whoever they were, you know, they would pick a few. And I think it was great. Like, it definitely brought out wonderful, innovative ideas, new ways to work, new products, etc. But for some reason, it didn't translate into the rest of the work. It was like, this is that program that we do. Well, every day in our meetings, there's opportunity for people to speak up. So it still didn't translate. And I think that was the hope, right? Like, let's show that we're innovative. Let's show that we bring everybody in. But it still didn't translate into the day-to-day where folks felt like, okay, when I sit with this executive, I can share my possibly harebrained idea, possibly not, right? Like, and what I try and coach people on to encourage them to speak up, to be brave to speak up, because it is not easy, especially when you're with executives who don't create that space. So you do have to find that courage, that even if it's not your idea that ends up on the finish line, you have said something that gets somebody else thinking. Right now they're thinking about something differently, and it's all part of that process, right? So every now and again an idea comes up and we just keep following, pulling on that thread. So that's how I try and encourage people to be brave.
And I'm on the just on the other side of that coin, telling them that even if nobody listens to you, you've just increased your courage and your identity has changed, because now you're apparently a badass.
Right. Yeah, your brand is poof, popped up big time. You're not, you've got courage, you've got confidence. I love it.
Yeah. Now, again, coming from way below the power line, like, you can get in a lot of trouble for being that strong.
Yeah.
So I don't know, how is it if you're already above the power line? And what does it look like when you step outside of sort of the shoulds there? Because even though you're a white woman, you're a woman. Yep. And us being included, that we're still not there.
Yeah. I worked in IT, and like you said, IT and finance for a long time. So very male dominated.
Yeah.
And I've not been in, I've not been in the place of power. And I don't think I ever have, just because I don't think that's me. Right. So even though you have a title, it just never was my comfort zone to be like, well, I think this. And what's interesting is people do expect that from you. So this goes back to the fake it till you make it a little bit, being a project manager early in my career around men. It was a little bit easier to be the devil's advocate, right? Because I did have a different perspective. I was pretty much the only woman around. And to be able to say, I don't understand. Explain that to me. Be curious, to be curious. What I got away with earlier in my career was cute.
Oh, wow.
There was a lot more tolerance for that because I was around
you were younger and you were cute.
And it was like, and not that I'm cute, I don't mean like I'm cute, but that there was way more tolerance for me to use that a little bit. And I really didn't understand. So it wasn't coming from a total place of genuine, but I was just the devil's advocate, right? I'm like, well, I don't
get that.
They would accept that a lot more because I was inexperienced. And, you play to people's egos a little bit on, well, you're educating me, you're teaching me. And that's where there's a little bit of a fine line, between manipulation and motivation, right?
Well, it's called adapting. Like, we women learn that if we're going to be listened to at all, we have to sort of stoop, and we have to sort of kowtow, and I mean,
that became my MO, like it was my MO. That was the way I thought I was being successful. And when I moved into a position where like that, it just wasn't needed. Like, I just didn't need to do that. I was actually allowed to say what it is that I thought and have an opinion. It was very, very hard for me. I had to learn a different way to go about it. So
you have to learn a different way I mean, there are even different words, there's different tones of voice, there's different ways you hold your body. It's a whole different identity. And making it not only doable, but then finding ways to own it.
Being comfortable in that.
Learning. It's another reason I love acting. I mean, I was on a call yesterday with a friend of mine who does a podcast, and she called me last minute, like the day before, and went, I got nobody for my podcast. You want to be on it? I'm like, I said, well, if you want somebody who's going to be really emotional and like tell the serious truth. And she's like, yeah, she goes, come on.
Yeah.
Best interview I've ever given, because
Awesome.
it was right there at that place of, damn, this is what I think, without it being, oh God, I'm pissed off. There's, right. But it was right there. And I'm like excited still today, because I'm so convinced that what you and I are talking about the importance of emotion in terms of who we are and what we can do and how we can move through this weird life where really we're all mentally ill. All right.
Yeah. Yep. We're all struggling, just different levels. We're all, chemical beings. Sometimes the chemicals are up, sometimes they're down. Yep.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, why are we so afraid to be just human? And in business, my theory is it started with the Industrial Revolution. Mm-hmm. Just what you said before, we went, human is nothing. Look what the machine can do. And now it's like, well, wait a second, the human, it actually built the machine. Yeah.
There's people think they don't have space for that, right? That's too messy. And again, I think it also comes back to emotional intelligence and self-awareness, right? If you're not comfortable with your own emotions, you are not gonna tolerate anybody's around you. It's very, you see this play out not just in work, it plays out in family dynamics too, right? Like,
of course,
you got the one, I'm always the one that's like, let's talk about that. Here's how I feel. I'm feeling and I realize like that gets me nowhere. That actually just makes me feel vulnerable and crappy. So then you don't do it anymore. All right. Until other people are comfortable with their emotions and are going to meet you to have that conversation, you're not going to do it. I used to cry a lot in my 20s, like at work. I just because I'm a very empathetic person, and I would feel very deeply about the people, but also like about the work. I wanted to do a good job. I didn't like it when people were having what I perceived as unhealthy disagreement about the work, and being, sneaky and manipulative to like try and maneuver to get things done. And I would, so I would get teary quite frequently. And I had like people tell me like, you cannot do that. You can't do that. And I'm like, well, this is who I am. So you're now telling me I can't be me. Like, it's not okay for me to have these feelings and express them in a way. And that doesn't serve anybody,
that doesn't serve anything. You're right.
And you're not, and not leveraging like my superpower, right? Like, not saying you actually really, really care. I see that you care deeply about this, Rachel. Okay. I mean, a little bit like, how do you get some boundaries so you can sleep at night, but that I cared and wanted so much for people to be successful and for things to be successful, that could have been leveraged in such a different way to say, awesome. And how are we gonna, work this out, work this through, instead of it being like, just let everybody do their thing and keep on to the, it's like, no, maybe we put this junk on the table and let people hash it out. But no, we're not comfortable with that.
No. And I'd love for you to give me some, or not just me, but the people watching, some hope in that there are leaders coming to you going, help me, and I'm very curious to know what's making them wake up and realize, I may need some assistance to understand my emotions. I mean, is that what they're literally coming to you for? Is like, what are they coming to?
I mean, I get the gamut for sure. Usually it, it comes first with communication. You know, people come to me to say like, I struggle with communicating with people above me or below me or whatever. So can you help me with that? And always how we start is like, well, what are your values? What's important to you? What do you want to see for yourself? And usually it ends up with pretty much like how I was feeling in my last role. My values were, people's values are so distant from how they're actually showing up. And a lot of that is with not being able to express themselves, to even recognize their emotions. Like, why is this thing such a trigger for you? Why do you respond this way? How can you step back when you're feeling a certain way? How do your feelings manifest? And once you can identify them, then you can start to have more meaningful, direct conversations with people. As to why people are waking up about it, I think it is just part of our evolution, right? We are moving up in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And, like I told a group the other day, empathy is not a nice to have. It is critical to your success as a manager, as a leader. People, I don't know who originally said the quote, but like, people don't leave jobs, they leave bosses.
They do. Oh God, yes.
Yeah.
Every single day. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not sure where that originated, but it's true. And so I think people are starting to recognize that is truth. And you need to meet people where they're at. I was talking to somebody the other day. It was a manager of this person that I'm coaching. So, and she was giving me feedback like, well, she's just kind of needy. Like, she needs a lot of attaboys and good jobs. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's your job. Yeah. I mean, I didn't say that because I'm not coaching her.
Right.
But like that's
so
the job is then give them what they need. And why are you so stingy with your recognition is what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
But like,
wow,
you want somebody to stay and work hard for you, give them what they need, find out what they need, find out what's important to them. So I do think there is just the more we talk about it, the more people are thinking about it. That is why they're going, yeah, I could probably use a little help in this space. And there are, as like, coaching is becoming a very, very common thing. I remember the guy I studied under, he said, my vision for the future is that, everybody has a coach like they have a doctor, or a dentist or whatever, that, that it's very accessible and that people just, you have a coach at some point in your career or a couple points in your career, and it's not like something's wrong, and that's the other thing. Like,
yeah,
we all have our growth edges. We all have our opportunities. Yeah. Some actions are more debilitating, and impactful on other people than
sure.
others, but we've all got opportunities to do better, to be better. And I think having a coach just helps reframe that and gives you a different perspective.
The biggest perspective shift for me in these last months has been that instead of thinking that I'm flawed in some way, I'm not flawed. Do I have things that I do that I could do better? Sure. Do I have growth I still need to go through? Of course. But that's the journey. I mean, if you were done, you'd be dead.
Boring. Yeah, boring.
So,
yeah, totally. What a beautiful perspective that you have too. And I do feel like when I left my corporate job and started out on my own, that was like the biggest shift for me, to not beat myself up so much about what I didn't know.
Right.
Yeah, there's lots of stuff I don't know, and that's okay. Some stuff I'm interested in learning and some stuff I'm not, and that's okay too, right? Like, to know your limitations and say, that's not for me right now, or I'm not interested in that right now. That's okay. But having that growth mindset certainly helps me sleep better at night, and not say, oh God, I could have done that better. I should have done that better, And being a mom, I think I go through that a lot. When I go to bed, it's the job that you didn't do your best. Like, every day you're like, oh man, I could have done that better. I should have done that better, and so I go to sleep with those thoughts, like, oh man, that happened, oof, yikes. And you think about the long-term impact you're having on this small human who has thoughts and feelings and emotions and expressions as well. And so one night as I wasn't sleeping, I said, why am I not drinking my own Kool-Aid here? Every coaching client, I always start out with what's going great? What's going great? So go to bed, Rachel, thinking about, what did you do well with your daughter today? What went great? What did you guys connect on? And that's the stuff I want to fall asleep to. That's the stuff that gets,
Yes.
wired in my brain, gets the deeper synapses or whatever,
Yeah.
Say, oh yeah, it's not all shit. I'm doing okay.
You're doing okay. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know, I have to bring in the spiritual and say, just as my mother, did, and my father did whatever they did that impacted me. And now I didn't end up having kids, but if I had had kids, I would have to say, then they have a lot of food for thought, and they have a lot of stuff to take to their therapist.
Right, exactly. A lot of fodder for therapy. Totally. I know that my mantra, and I was one of those, I had a child later in life. I wasn't too sure. Actually, for years, I wasn't going to have a kid. Like, that was not it for me. And it mostly came from a place of fear. I didn't want the power of having to influence somebody and pass all on my stuff to her. And when I did decide that I was going to have a child, I said, you know what? I'm going to make mistakes. Yeah. I just want them to be different mistakes than my parents made with me. Like, that to me will be success. I don't want to perpetuate the cycle. Like, let them at least be different mistakes, because we're going to make mistakes. They're going to have stuff to talk to their therapist about, and my hope is that my daughter's confident enough to say, I need a therapist. Hopefully she's seen me, have enough over the years to go, like you have a coach, like you have a boss, like you have a friend, you have a therapist, you have a dentist, a doctor.
Absolutely.
My favorite bill to pay every month.
Take my money, because I'm so much happier now.
Yeah. Reframe away. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, what you're doing is so profound. It is, bringing into that mechanistic mindset, stepping in there and going, I'd like to suggest that we think in a human way. So I want to thank you for being part of those of us who are out here, making little tiny changes that will cause great big changes.
Yeah, that's right. One step at a time.
Crucial. What is some advice that you would give to leaders who feel like they'd like to understand this kind of thing better? What can they do? Where can they dip their feet in?
Yeah, well, the one thing that I have found that works, obviously, like talking about this, of course, but doing these team building exercises, like regardless of what tools you use, like the predictive index to do, team building, and really have a common vocabulary that kind of takes the little bit of the sting out. It doesn't make it so personal, and you go, oh, we all have these nuances. We all have these tendencies or styles of how we approach work, how we communicate, how we show up. It's a really great way to start the conversation, and it feels much safer than putting yourself out there and going like, okay, I'm gonna do a nosedive into emotional intelligence and get a 30-page report on something and be completely overwhelmed, which is great too if you're there to do it, but there's other ways, to kind of, and it creates great camaraderie. It creates good vulnerability, a little bit safer. And I think we've seen humor is a great, the equalizer, and it's just like when we can joke about I'm the captain, I'm the maverick, whatever, it makes it a little bit easier to shed some of those layers to get folks comfortable.
Just for people who don't know, Rachel and I are both certified partners of a company called the Predictive Index. which my translation of what they do, because it just knocks me out, is that they use data to make business more human instead of using data to make it more inhuman. What a concept. So yeah, it's amazing. Amazing. People-centric. And what advice would you give to other people like us who are trying to make headway into corporations, into small businesses, big businesses, middle businesses, to help get the message out there? Do you have like a bead on that? Or is that what you're
I don't know if I have a beat on it, but I'll just share what I've been doing.
Okay.
I'm not afraid to use my network. 20 years, I've met a lot of people, and, a little bit, at first that made me very uncomfortable, to reach out to folks and say, hey, here's what I'm up to. But I think for the most part, they want to hear, and people do want, number one, they want to help you. They do want to help you. They want to see you succeed. So nobody's ever like, oh, don't call me again. And if they do, that's okay, right? That is okay. That wasn't the right person, the right time, the right situation. But people do want you to succeed. So they're looking then for opportunities, even if it's not within their group, to refer you. And ask, I think that was the biggest thing that I learned too. Like, don't be afraid to ask for the referral. If you know somebody who blah, 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 I hope you'll think of me. And in whatever way that's comfortable for you. Like, I'm not a very direct person. Sales, and I try not to even think about it as sales, business development. I'm like, well, at the end of the day, we're all selling something. We're selling an idea. We're trying to influence. Like, I'm influencing change.
Yes. That's exceptional advice. And I love that you're not like, I don't think of sales as sales either. I think of it as being an advocate.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
So that, like when I used to work for a big, what do you call it? A clothing chain. And people would call in, and instead of going, oh, you want that dress? How about you buy 6 of these? I would get them talking. I would connect with them. It wasn't just like a gizmo thing that I did. It was like, I really like people. I think we're nuts, and I love us, and we're so vulnerable, and I feel sorry for us that we have such a hard time. So like, I'm fascinated, and I get somebody on the phone. I'm like, hi, how you doing? And they're like, oh God, it's a real person. Like, oh, and then you get to talking, and then I did need to buy some of those shoes. Like, well, let me help you.
Yeah, right. What's the need, right? What is their need? Not what are you selling? What do they need?
Right. And a lot of this people will say, well, yeah, I learned that in a training. It's different. If you're living your values, as you mentioned, that takes a great deal of authenticity and vulnerability and courage and determination, and knowing why the hell you're even going to undertake it. Yeah.
Amen. Well said.
And the choir saying. Thank you so much for taking all this time to hang out with us. This is
so fun. Thank you so much. Yeah, so fun. I appreciate the opportunity to chat. Thanks so much for having me. You are so easy to talk to. Just such a joy.
Yay. Oh God, yeah. I love talking to you, and I love this. I get to meet the coolest people, and I've only done, I think you're my 8th. Last summer I did 28 interviews with people from around the whole world. Wow. That was so amazing.
Wow.
Amazing. So yeah, I now have friends in South Africa and Australia, and
oh, beautiful. Beautiful.
So fab.
And like you said, it's the human condition. We can all connect on that. We're all experiencing very similar things.
And I'm going to say that's the mic drop right there. So thank you. Let's do this again as we move forward in our respective businesses. And who knows, maybe we'll end up doing something together. You never know.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Or in person.
Oh my God. I might be able to like give you an actual hug. Wait. Right. What's your feel like?
Oh, goodness.
All right. Take care of you.